The insistent shrill of the alarm clock sliced through the suffocating darkness of Elias's bedroom, each piercing beep a fresh stab at his already frayed nerves. He slammed his hand down on the snooze button with a force that rattled the bedside table, the momentary silence offering little respite from the gnawing anxiety that had become his constant companion. Today was the day, the culmination of months of relentless pressure, sleepless nights fueled by lukewarm coffee and simmering resentment. The quarterly earnings report for Omnitech was due, and the preliminary figures painted a grim picture. A significant downturn, a failure to meet projected growth, the blame for which Elias knew with a chilling certainty would land squarely on his shoulders. As head of innovation, he had championed bold new projects, initiatives he believed were vital for the company's future, but the market had been volatile. Unforeseen challenges had emerged, and now the ambitious ventures he had so passionately advocated for were being branded as costly mistakes. He dragged himself out of bed, the familiar ache in his shoulders, a testament to the stress he carried. The mirror reflected a gaunt face etched with worry, the dark circles under his eyes stark against his pale skin. He looked like a man teetering on the edge, and in many ways, he felt like one. The tension in the Omnitech boardroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Elias sat at the long mahogany table, the weight of every gaze pressing down on him. Across from him, CEO Mr. Caldwell's expression was a carefully constructed mask of disappointment, his eyes holding a glint of barely concealed displeasure. Of course, numbers were laid out, stark and unforgiving on the large display screen. The silence in the room was broken only by the occasional rustle of papers and the strained clearing of throats. When Mr. Caldwell finally spoke, his voice was low and measured, each word carrying the weight of unspoken accusations. "Elias," he began, his tone betraying a hint of weary resignation. "These results are deeply concerning. The investment in Project Chimera and the Aurora Initiative has not yielded the returns we anticipated. In fact, they have significantly impacted our overall profitability." A wave of anger, hot and sharp, surged through Elias. He wanted to defend his decisions, to explain the long-term potential that these projects still held, to point out the unforeseen market shifts that had played a significant role. But the atmosphere in the room was suffocating, the judgment in the eyes of his colleagues palpable. Before he could formulate a coherent response, Ms. Albright, the chief financial officer, interjected, her voice cool and precise. "The board has serious concerns about the direction of the innovation department, Elias. We need accountability. Accountability." The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Elias felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. He knew what was coming. The whispers had been circulating for weeks, rumors of restructuring, of a need for a fresh perspective. The meeting continued, a slow, agonizing dissection of the quarterly report, with Elias feeling increasingly like a specimen under a microscope. Every question felt like an accusation, every silence a condemnation. The weight of their collective disappointment was a physical burden, pressing down on him, stealing his breath. Later that evening, Elias found himself pacing the confines of his study, the rain lashing against the window pane mirroring the storm, raging within him. He replayed the meeting in his mind, each word, each glance amplifying his sense of injustice. He had poured years of his life, his creativity, his very being into this company. And for what? To be treated like a scapegoat, his contributions dismissed, his future hanging precariously in the balance. He stopped by his grandfather's old desk, a sturdy piece of furniture that had been a silent witness to generations of family triumphs and tribulations. A worn leather-bound book lay open, a bookmark indicating a well-read passage. It was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Almost instinctively, Elias picked it up, his fingers tracing the faded gold lettering on the cover. He flipped through the pages, his eyes landing on a passage that seemed to leap out at him. "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." The words resonated with a sudden, unexpected force. He had been so consumed by the external situation, the negative report, the board's disapproval, the looming threat to his career, that he had allowed it to dictate his inner turmoil. His anger, his anxiety, were reactions to his interpretation of these events, not the events themselves. He had the power to change his perspective, to revoke the judgment he had placed upon the situation. He continued reading, his gaze drawn to another profound observation. How much more devastating are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? Seneca's wisdom, encountered in a margin note scribbled in his grandfather's familiar hand, struck a chord. Elias recognized the truth in it. His anger was consuming him, clouding his judgment, and preventing him from seeing the situation with any semblance of clarity. It was a self-inflicted wound, potentially far more damaging than the initial sting of the boardroom critique. As the rain outside softened to a steady drizzle, a fragile sense of calm began to descend upon Elias. The Stoic philosophy he had encountered offered a different lens through which to view his predicament. It spoke of focusing on virtue, on reason, on accepting what lay beyond his direct control. He couldn't change the outcome of the earnings report, nor could he dictate the board's reaction, but he could control his response. He could choose not to be consumed by bitterness, not to let anger fester and dictate his future actions. He spent the rest of the evening immersed in the wisdom of Aurelius and Seneca, his grandfather's annotations, adding another layer of depth and personal connection to the ancient texts. He found solace in their emphasis on inner resilience, on the importance of living in accordance with reason and virtue, regardless of external circumstances. The sting of the boardroom meeting hadn't completely vanished, but its power over him had begun to wane. He started to see the situation not as a personal indictment, but as a challenge, an obstacle to be navigated with clarity and fortitude. His focus shifted from seeking external validation to cultivating his own inner strength. Days turned into weeks. The fallout from the earnings report was significant. A restructuring was indeed announced, and Elias's role was eliminated. There was a period of intense disappointment, a natural grieving for the career he had built. But this time the anger and anxiety were less consuming. The seeds of Stoic wisdom had taken root. Instead of lashing out or succumbing to despair, Elias focused on what he could control: his job search, his personal development, and his interactions with his family and friends. He approached his job hunt with a renewed sense of purpose, his past experiences serving as valuable lessons rather than sources of resentment. He spent time reflecting on his values, on the kind of work environment where he could truly thrive. Months later, he found a new opportunity, a role at a smaller, more agile company where his innovative thinking was not only valued but actively encouraged. He approached his new position with a sense of gratitude and a quiet confidence that came not from external validation, but from an inner understanding of his own worth and capabilities. He even had a chance encounter with Mr. Caldwell at an industry event. The former CEO looked tired, the weight of corporate pressures evident in his demeanor. He offered a perfunctory nod, a ghost of their former interactions. Elias responded with a genuine, unburdened smile. He held no bitterness, no desire for retribution. He had moved on, not just professionally, but emotionally. As he walked away, Elias realized the profound impact of the Stoic wisdom he had embraced. True strength wasn't found in external success or the absence of adversity, but in the ability to navigate life's inevitable challenges with reason, resilience, and inner peace. The initial tension, anger, and anxiety had been powerful, but the philosophy he had discovered provided a framework for transmuting those negative emotions into a catalyst for growth and a deeper understanding of himself. The practical lesson Elias learned, and one that holds true for all of us, is this: life will inevitably present us with situations that trigger intense negative emotions. Whether it's professional setbacks, personal betrayals, or unexpected crises, these feelings are a natural human response. However, our true power lies not in avoiding these situations but in how we choose to respond to them. The principles of Stoicism, as illuminated by Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, offer a timeless guide for navigating these turbulent waters. Recognize the power of perception. Our emotional reactions are not solely determined by external events, but by our interpretation of those events. By consciously examining our judgments and challenging negative thought patterns, we can lessen their emotional impact. Focus on what you can control. Much of our anxiety and anger stems from worrying about things outside our sphere of influence. Shifting our focus to our own thoughts, actions, and values empowers us to take meaningful steps and reduces feelings of helplessness. Understand the destructive nature of uncontrolled emotions. Letting anger and resentment fester harms us more than the perceived wrongdoers. Cultivating self-awareness and practicing emotional regulation are crucial for our well-being and clear thinking. Embrace impermanence and change. Life is a constant state of flux. Recognizing this inherent impermanence can help us to accept setbacks as temporary and inevitable parts of the human experience, rather than catastrophic failures. Cultivate virtue and reason. By striving to act with integrity, fairness, and wisdom, regardless of external circumstances, we build a strong inner foundation that cannot be easily shaken by external events. Just as Elias found a path from intense emotional turmoil to a place of inner peace and renewed purpose, we too can learn to navigate life's challenges with greater resilience and wisdom by embracing the timeless principles of Stoicism. The power to find calm amidst the storm lies within our ability to control our minds and choose our responses.